When the man left his home for a walk in the park this afternoon, he never guessed that he would encounter a monster. But now here he is, standing face to face with the most terrifying thing he has ever seen. He heard it before he saw it, the sound of dozens of legs skittering across the ground, growing closer and closer until the thing crept into view. At first, he doesn't believe what he sees. It looks like a centipede, but it's so much bigger. Like something out of a monster movie from the 50s. Attack of the 5-foot centipede. But he won't stick around to let this thing attack him. He turns and makes a break for it, running as fast as he can until his chest begins to burn from the effort. He stops, panting, and curses himself for not going for runs more often. But hopefully, he's managed to elude the creature. He turns around, and all the color drains from his face. There it is, right behind him. He shouts at it, waving his arms, trying to scare it off, but it just keeps coming. Okay, he didn't want to try this, but there's only one thing to do with a bug that won't leave you alone, even a giant one. He lifts his foot, and as the huge centipede approaches, he stomps on it. There's a crunching sound as his foot breaks through the carapace, then a sickening splat. He feels a brief surge of guilt for stomping on the thing. After all, he's usually the type to carry spiders outside rather than squish them. But desperate times call for desperate measures. He wipes his foot off on the grass and continues toward home. Every so often on his walk back, he thinks he hears that sickening skittering sound. But every time he turns to look, there's nothing there. Whatever freaky mutant bug he encountered in the park, it's dead. Or at least it's far too wounded to follow him home. What is he thinking? Even if it wasn't hurt, bugs can't track people, and they don't hold grudges. At least, he hopes they don't, as he swallows the anxious lump in his throat. Once he's back at home, he's able to put all thoughts of the nightmare encounter in the park out of his mind. He orders a pizza for dinner as a bit of a special treat, watches a bit of TV, and heads to bed. It's a little stuffy in the room tonight, and the air conditioning is busted, so he leaves his window open to cool the room down. It's a safe neighborhood, he's done it before. He settles in for bed and doesn't give the wide-open window a second thought, never once considering what might come crawling through. When he wakes up the next morning, the bed feels different somehow. It takes him a moment to register the sensation, but as his eyes slowly flutter open, he realizes what has changed. There's someone in bed with him. No, not someone. Something. He yanks back the covers to reveal the giant centipede curled up in bed beside him. His stomach roils, and he tastes acid in the back of his throat. How did it... The window. It came in through the window. But how did it find him? And more importantly, why doesn't it even look injured? The creature stirs, antenna twirling, and it turns to look at him. It takes a moment to stretch as if it too is waking up, and it begins to crawl toward him. All rational thought abandons the man, leaving him with nothing but fight or flight. He chooses the latter, but not before grabbing the lamp off of his bedside table and throwing it at the thing. Hopefully that's enough to slow it down. He grabs his phone and runs out the front door, not even stopping to put on shoes or lock the front door. Thankfully, the centipede doesn't chase after him, at least as far as he can tell. His legs collapse beneath him, and he sinks to his knees in his yard, heart still racing from the shock. With shaking hands, he searches for information on a nearby exterminator and makes the call. He'll pay whatever the exterminator wants. He'll double the rate if that's what it takes. Whatever gets him here as soon as humanly possible. 15 minutes later, the pest control truck pulls into his driveway, and an exterminator steps out. The man isn't sure how to explain his problem exactly, so he settles on centipede infestation. This guy's a professional. Surely he's seen something like this before, if anyone has ever seen anything like this before. The man watches from the sidewalk as the exterminator opens the front door, stepping inside. As he does, he lets out a high-pitched scream. Then, suddenly, he topples backward, landing hard on the ground. On top of him is the centipede. It swarms over him, holding him down. The man watches helplessly for a moment before springing into action. He rushes to the garage and grabs a shovel before coming to the aid of the exterminator. Summoning all his strength, he slams the shovel into the centipede, sending it flying off of its intended victim. He doesn't stop there. He hits the centipede with the shovel again and again and again, until it stops moving. Then he extends a hand to the exterminator, helping him up. Now, he explains, the exterminator sees the sort of problem he's been dealing with. He asks the exterminator if he can help, but he says nothing in response. Instead, the exterminator simply turns, ashen-faced, and walks back to his truck. He climbs inside, starts the engine, and floors it out of the neighborhood, driving as fast as the truck will go. The man is alone again, with this bug he can't seem to squash. He turns back to assess the carcass of the centipede, and his jaw drops at what he sees next. The carapace is rebuilding itself, closing up the holes, and refilling the dents left by the shovel. Legs bent out of place straighten out again, back where they belong. The goo that he assumed was the bug's innards is absorbed back into its body, and as he watches, it rolls over and rights itself again, then comes crawling toward him. As it reaches him, it stops and rears back, lifting the front of its body off the ground. The shovel is useless to defend himself. He knows that now. Instead, he freezes, staring at the monster before him, waiting for it to strike. But it doesn't. It just looks at him for a long while, before extending one of its legs toward him in a deliberate gesture. It almost looks like, and this makes no sense, the thing is asking for a handshake. Slowly, tentatively, with utter disbelief, the man extends his hand and grasps the spindly little appendage. Using its entire body to move the leg, the centipede lifts the man's hand up and then pushes it down. He laughs at this, a sudden barking sound that surprises both him and the centipede. But he can't help it. It's all so absurd. He just shook hands with a bug. But as bizarre as the situation is, he also feels a wave of relief wash over him. Whatever this thing is, and it definitely is no ordinary bug, it doesn't seem like it wants to hurt him. So, unsure of what to do other than give in to the absurdity of the moment, the man walks back into his house with the centipede right on his heels. He shuts the door behind them and turns to his uninvited house guest. "So, you like TV?" Its antennae wave curiously, and it appears to be waiting for a response. He picks up the remote and switches on the television. Then, on the weirdest Sunday of his life, he and the giant centipede watch some TV together. He eats a few pieces of leftover pizza and, not wanting to be rude, offers a slice to the centipede. Much to his surprise, the bug takes the slice in its mandibles and promptly eats it. That night, the man puts down some newspaper on his floor to give the centipede a place to sleep, but the bug insists on crawling into his bed again instead. At first, he protests, but he has to admit it's kind of nice to have some company, even if it's a bit unconventional. He always wanted a dog, but his allergies made it impossible. So maybe, in a weird way, this is the next best thing? When he wakes up, the centipede is gone. He scans the room, looking for any signs of it, but he can't see anything. He calls out for it and hears the skittering of legs approaching the room. When the centipede enters, he notices it's carrying something. The TV remote. It crawls up onto the bed and drops the remote into his lap like a loyal dog delivering the paper to its owner. Unsure of what else to do, he gives the centipede a gentle pat on its back. "Hey, thanks, bud." The centipede continues bringing him little gifts in the morning, such as the TV remote, his phone, and his glasses, and once it even brings him some mail that was slipped through the slat in the door. As the days progress, and he grows more used to his many-legged friend, he notices some changes in its appearance and behavior. It's getting smarter, responding to verbal commands in a way it couldn't before. It's figured out how to open doors, how to turn on the TV by itself, and which channels the man likes best. There are some downsides to keeping the critter around. It insists on eating a serving of whatever he's having for any given meal, and working from home is difficult with the risk of the thing scuttling through the background of a video call. But otherwise, he's starting to get used to this new addition to the household. Even when the centipede develops what he can only describe as thumbs along some of its front legs, appendages it can use to grab items and interact with the world more like a person, he isn't disturbed. Nothing surprises him anymore. The only time he is truly shocked by the centipede's changes is the day it speaks its first words. One morning, he hears a creaky little high-pitched voice say,
"TV time."
It shouldn't be possible, but it's the centipede speaking to him. He can't see a mouth that might produce the words, but somehow the thing has figured out how to talk. Its vocabulary continues to grow, and it picks up words and phrases that the man uses on a regular basis. The thing is becoming less like a pet and more like a friend, a little buddy that wants to be just like him in as many ways as it can. He comes up with a new nickname for the centipede, Junior. It takes to the name immediately, responding when called and always running to answer. As the two grow closer, they pass the days together with a simple routine. Wake up, have breakfast together, work from home while keeping it a secret as best you can, dinner and evening TV, and bed before they do it all again the next day. It's not a bad little life, though he knows it would look horrifying to an uninformed outsider. The man becomes so accustomed to his new routine and his new companion that he almost forgets about the exterminator who is scared off by the centipede. But when his doorbell rings and he opens it to find two strange men waiting on his doorstep with a clipboard full of questions about giant bugs, he remembers. As it turns out, the exterminator quickly spread the word about his terrifying encounter, and his story caught the attention of an organization that specializes in, to use their words, the cataloging of previously undiscovered flora and fauna. Much to his dismay, the men take Junior away from him, but they promise that he may be able to come and visit once they've determined it's safe. They take Junior to the nearest SCP Foundation site and give it a new name, SCP-3153. SCP-3153 refers to a series of arthropods that superficially resemble the Scolopendra polymorpha species of centipedes native to northwestern Oregon. These creatures measure approximately 1.76 meters in length, and they weigh an average of 82 kilograms. I don't mean to disrespect these creatures, but that is a great deal larger than any centipede I am comfortable being in the presence of. Beneath the surface of their chitinous carapace, SCP-3153 instances are made from a mass of something similar to totipotent stem cells, though they act at a much, much faster rate. The function of these cells is to form new organs, limbs, and tissues depending on how much SCP-3153 instances interact with and form emotional bonds with human subjects. These adaptations appear to be an attempt by SCP-3153 instances to mimic and please whichever human they are bonding with. Upon initial contact with a human that it is interested in, an instance of SCP-3153 will operate with sophisticated animal intelligence. It will use this intelligence to attempt to be useful to its chosen human. Some of its behaviors at this stage include bringing small objects to the human subject that they will need in the morning, such as their toothbrush or eyeglasses. They have also been known to swarm over a perceived intruder to the subject's home in an attempt to protect them from harm. During this phase, they will also begin to mimic the human subject by eating the same foods as them or nesting on their bed like a dog or cat might. If this attention has not been reciprocated, and if the human attempts to harm the instance, it will display an impressive ability to regenerate from almost any physical harm. Even if they are attacked by their chosen human, SCP-3153 instances will never fight back. They are docile, forgiving, and persistent in their pursuit of a bond. The instance will continue to bring items to the subject, nest nearby, and otherwise try to ingratiate itself to them, until the human speaks to the instance in a friendly manner, leaves it an offering of food, or otherwise expresses the reciprocation of the bond. During this period, SCP-3153 instances will shed human-adjacent biological tissue from its massive stem-like cells. Though these blobs of tissue are unpleasant to stumble on or step on in the middle of the night on the way to the bathroom, they are usually completely harmless and are just part of the instance's preparation for its inevitable adaptation. As SCP-3153 instances spend more time with a human subject, they gradually develop the ability to recognize human facial expressions and discern their meaning. They become more affectionate at this stage and will often attempt to stand upright and give their favorite human a hug, which is either adorable or a bit terrifying depending on your perspective. I myself land somewhere in the middle. SCP-3153 instances will generally remain close to their human at all times, attempting to keep them safe from any possible harm. During this stage of bonding, they develop a greater understanding of language and technology, as well as the necessary anatomical adaptations to use them, such as hands with thumbs, mouths capable of speech, and vocal folds that produce a speaking voice. The adaptations only continue from here, as the SCP-3153 instance attempts to become more and more like their favorite human. However, as much as they might try, the instance will not be capable of accurately replicating the form or behavior of a human. The result is either an endearingly bumbling attempt, or what some have described as smack dab in the middle of the uncanny valley. But the process doesn't stop there. Remember the shedding, the unpleasant blobs of organic tissue all over the place. The shedding increases at this point, and can cause quite a mess if it is not attended to. Luckily, SCP-3153 instances are good listeners, and 92% of them will follow directions if they are told to reduce their shedding. Some of them get a bit too creative with this prompt and attempt to reshape their shed material into something edible, which they then present to their human as gifts. If the human refuses these gifts, the SCP-3153 instance will become incredibly sad and will retreat from socialization for a period after due to its hurt feelings. When the Foundation first discovered SCP-3153, there were concerns amongst the researchers that the anomalous creatures produce mind-affecting anomalies. After all, they could think of no other explanation for the deep bonds that have formed between several instances and their chosen humans. But a closer examination revealed no such mind-altering effects. As it turns out, the humans that have bonded with SCP-3153 instances see them as pets, just as a human might bond to any other pet. Yes, these pets are giant centipedes with slight shape-shifting capabilities, but companionship is companionship when push comes to shove. So far, according to Foundation records, 68% of human subjects have successfully bonded with their SCP-3153 instances, resulting in a 21% increase in overall productivity. This morale boost was so notable that one SCP Foundation researcher proposed the potential use of SCP-3153 for therapeutic purposes in the paper Humane Pests and Pestilent Humans, on the emergence of non-conventional friendships between Homo sapiens and anomalous arthropods. I found it to be quite a persuasive piece of writing. I recommend giving it a read if you can find it. You may not have the security clearance, though. SCP-3153 is kept in an artificial containment habitat for centipedes at Site-64 in Forest Park, Portland, Oregon. The interior of the habitat is decorated to resemble a non-specific major metropolitan area, complete with visual and audio props meant to perpetuate the illusion and convince SCP-3153 instances that they are living in the outside world. This includes concrete, as well as speakers that play the ambient sounds of traffic in accordance with a standard rush hour schedule. In addition to the ordinary care required by non-anomalous centipedes, SCP-3153 instances are to be provided with weekly social interaction sessions with anywhere between 1 and 5 D-Class personnel. They may also receive social interaction sessions with employees of Goal 466, Wilson's Wildlife Solutions, that have Level 2 site-wide clearance. Sarah Gardner must always be given access, as she is bonded with SCP-3153-1. Anyone interested in participating in the social enrichment of SCP-3153 must first conduct and pass a psychological evaluation. This evaluation is intended to detect tendencies toward excessive emotional attachment, and candidates must be screened accordingly. Once someone has been approved, each socialization session may go on for a maximum of 1 hour and is to be monitored closely by researchers who will watch for the biological and behavioral changes to SCP-3153 that are sure to manifest. Once these alterations appear, they must be recorded and registered for posterity in order to allow for a fuller understanding of SCP-3153's genetics. Civilians who come into contact with instances of SCP-3153 in the wild must be given Class B amnestics, and the instances they met must be recovered by Goal 466 and brought into containment. At first glance, SCP-3153 might seem horrifying, disgusting, and repellent to behold. But we should all know better than to judge a book by its cover. At their core, these creatures seem to be gentle, friendly, loyal, and highly emotionally sensitive. All they want is to spend time with us. And why should they be denied that just because they look a bit different? In my opinion, they aren't so different from dogs, with a whole lot more legs. Dogs have been man's best friend for quite some time, but perhaps we could make room in our hearts for some new friends too, even if they look a little bit scary. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-213, Antimatter Parasite,